The episode begins with a young girl crying and pleading with a boy named Haru not to leave her. Haru assures the girl, Mage, that he will return for her when he is older and marry her so they can always be together. Next, we see a teenager on a bus who notices a little girl staring at him just moments before the bus driver loses control and crashes into a train on the tracks. The scene transitions to a boy with long hair waking up on the floor of a wooden house. He becomes panicked as he realizes he doesn't recognize his surroundings. The story then reveals a walled town known as the Kingdom of Beltram. The boy starts to recall memories as Haru, the teenage boy. However, he also believes he is someone named Ryo. His memories are conflicting, and he is uncertain about what is happening to him. He remembers being on the bus but has no understanding of what a bus is. Suddenly, 3 men enter the room and refer to him as Ryo. It seems that Ryo had a severe fever the day before. The men sit at a table and begin to eat, while one of them instructs Ryo to wash up. Ryo leaves the house and goes outside to gather berries for sustenance. He recalls his acquaintance, Haruto, who resided in Japan but tragically passed away in a bus accident. However, Ryo doesn't fully grasp the concept of an accident. He then recollects that he is Ryo, living in impoverished conditions from a bygone era, driven by a desire to avenge his mother. A memory of his mother surfaces, where she informs him that they originated from a distant place called Yagumo. She had promised to take him there one day to meet his grandparents as he grew older. Yet, he is also haunted by the tragic memory of witnessing his mother being murdered by a man. Ryo wipes away his tears and dons his shirt, preparing to depart. A group of women, accompanied by girls in uniforms, approach. The girls appear frightened of Ryo. The women inquire whether he has seen a girl with light purple hair. One of the girls asserts herself, expressing dissatisfaction with his response. Her name is Celia, and she introduces herself to Ryo. As she walks towards him, Ryo reciprocates by introducing himself. He informs Celia that he hasn't encountered the girl with purple hair. The woman suggests to Lady Christina, one of the girls, that they should change their attire to blend in with the locals of the slums during their search for the purple-haired girl. The woman instructs Celia to investigate the area for any magical traces, prompting Celia to employ a search spell that surprises Ryo. Suddenly, a blue aura envelops Ryo, indicating an overflow of magical power within him. Celia recognizes his potential for magic and, along with the other women, compensates him for the information provided by giving him a bag filled with silver coins. Ryo discreetly conceals the bag and hurries towards his house. Upon entering, he is ambushed by a man dressed in black who attempts to stab him. Fortunately, the bag of coins acts as a shield, preventing the knife from reaching Ryo and saving him from harm. The man shuts the door and advances towards Ryo. Taking note of the 3 unconscious men in the room, Ryo scans his surroundings. Just as the man is about to strike again, a girl with a pink aura materializes, offering to teach Ryo how to harness his magical abilities. The blue aura once again engulfs Ryo, as the girl instructs him to use it to strengthen his body. The aura reveals the image of Haru. In response, the man activates his own magic, launching an attack against Ryo. However, utilizing his extraordinary magical powers, Ryo manages to defeat his assailant. Suddenly, a girl inside a bag cries out for help. Ryo opens the bag to find a girl with purple hair. She implores Ryo to escort her to the castle, where her father will reward him. Upon discovering one of the men dead, the girl faints. With the girl on his back, Ryo proceeds towards the castle, catching the attention of the women and Celia. Celia rushes towards Ryo and reprimands him for deceiving them. Lady Christina believes that Ryo has abducted Flora, her younger sister. Ryo attempts to explain himself, but Christina continues to provoke and physically assault him. In his attempt to free himself, Ryo inadvertently grips Christina's hand too tightly. This prompts the woman to draw her sword and demand that Ryo release her and continue his account. Ryo is then instructed to proceed to the castle to share his story. A man named Sir Alfred, accompanied by a group of soldiers, is near the house. They discover a man who is still alive and take him away. It is the man who attacked Ryo. Another individual wearing a black hood witnesses the attacker and crushes a stone in his hand. Suddenly, the attacker collapses and dies. The hooded person departs from the scene. Ryo is taken to a prison and suspended by his hand while vice captain of the Knights, Charles Arbor, listens to his story. Charles accuses Ryo of kidnapping Flora, but Ryo denies it. Charles proceeds to strike Ryo with a bat. Princess Flora awakens and learns about Ryo. She promptly summons him. Meanwhile, in the prison, Charles continues to torture Ryo in an attempt to extract the truth from him. However, Rio has already divulged all he knows. A woman arrives and escorts Rio away to Flora. Rio awakens in a bed with Celia beside him. Celia explains that she healed him using magic and apologizes for her previous actions. She informs Rio that the king wishes to express his gratitude for what he has done. Rio asks Celia if she could instruct him in proper etiquette before meeting the king, to which she agrees. When Rio arrives, the king and all the princesses are already present. Rio is dressed in royal attire and has had his hair trimmed. He approaches the king and kneels down. Celia offers to teach Rio how to read and write, as he is unfamiliar with these skills. She warmly welcomes him to the Royal Academy. The king has granted Rio enrollment as a token of appreciation for saving his daughter. Rio introduces himself to the class, but some of the children mock him. Celia serves as their teacher, and the lesson begins. After class, Rio seeks Celia's assistance for a tutoring session in writing and reading. Her house is filled with books. Celia reveals that she is 12 years old and skipped grades to graduate from high school. Rio manages to impress Celia with his intelligence, quickly grasping everything. Suddenly, Rio recollects his previous life as Haru, a university student. Celia and Rio spend more time together, discussing how Rio is adjusting to his new life. The following day, during combat training, the instructor asks Rio to strike him however he wants. Haru used to practice martial arts, and Rio suddenly recalls his training. He begins attacking the instructor and impresses everyone except for one jealous boy. The instructor comments that Rio would make a great knight, but Rio is not interested, which surprises everyone. Rio diligently studies in the library, striving to achieve the best possible grade, despite being a new student at the academy. The next day, they take their exam, and Rio seems to be performing well. Suddenly, Rio remembers Mai, the girl from his previous life whom he promised to marry. The grades are released the following day, and Rio is at the top of the class, surpassing even Lady Christina. The jealous boy from earlier accuses him of cheating, but Celia disproves these claims. The jealous boy becomes upset and leaves. Later, Rio and Celia sit down for tea and conversation. Rio tells Celia that she is his friend, surprising her. 5 years pass. One day, during combat training, the instructor calls out 3 primary school representatives for the nightly tournament, and 2 of them are Rio and the jealous boy named Rodden. Rodden objects to the instructor's decision, as he believes Rio, being from a lower class, cannot use any magic. Later, Celia and Rio have a conversation, during which Rio reveals his plan to go on a journey after graduating. He expresses his desire to visit his parents' homeland, Yagumo. Celia is familiar with Yagumo and describes it as a place at the edge of wilderness. The day of the tournament arrives, and Rio is the first to fight. His opponent is the person who previously tormented him, Charles Arbor. Rio's fighting style is completely different from the traditional style everyone employs. They engage in an intense battle, but Rio manages to gain the upper hand and emerge victorious. As Rio exits the battle arena, he is cheered on by the crowd. Later, we see Charles sharing a drink with the hooded man who killed the attacker 5 years ago. Charles recounts the story of Rio and how he ended up at the academy. The next day, Celia spots Rio walking somewhere and wonders where he is headed. She catches sight of Rio with a girl who gives him something and compliments him on his fight. The girl suddenly runs away, leaving Celia teary-eyed. The episode opens with the young girl as she sits in the library looking through plans that are slated for after their graduation, and notices the only person who did not write anything in Rio. She recalls asking him where he wanted to go, and he told her he wanted to go to his parents' homeland, the Yagumo region. The scene begins with a group of students who have recently graduated discussing their future plans and concerns about what lies ahead after graduation. Their professor addresses them about magic and the fact that magic uses formulae designed to control magical power. As she continues, she makes it clear that in the room, everyone should be well capable of using low-level magic. But a student stands up to clarify it, telling her that there is one person who cannot use it, and a special lecture is needed for those with poor magical control. The aim of this is to make fun of the student who could not utilize such magic, and just then, the other students begin to laugh at the supposed student. This does not go down well with the professor, who asks the champions of the criticism to try using lighting for her. With confidence, they both did their lighting test, feeling all-knowing as they did it, but the professor makes them understand that at that particular level, she cannot say they have mastered it yet. She continues that even without the use of magic, with the existence of artifacts, there are those who can use multiple magical techniques simultaneously. Just like that, she shows them an example as she does her beautiful lighting magic and makes them understand that one person can control that much lighting at once, and this leaves her students in amazement. At that moment, the student who was being referred to by the other students earlier realizes that, though he cannot cast magic like they can, by imitating the flow of magical power for some reason, he is able to reproduce magical techniques. He is surprised at that point to see his professor in front of him, and he asks them to begin their lecture on magical control. Soon the class ended, and one of the students went to meet the professor, named Celia, and told him how amazed he was by her lectures and examples. The name of the student is STW Wart, and so, as he talks to his professor, he sees the student who is not really good with his lighting, and he warns him not to try to seduce the female students and also reminds him that he had won the tournament through a fluke. The professor reprimands him for acting that way toward the student, who is known as Rio. Still, he does not end there. He warns him that he will deal with him if he tries something similar during the outdoor practicum. Flora, one of the students, feels bad for him as he is not able to do anything for Rio while he is alone and has to sort things out by himself. During their practicum, Rio is assigned to carry the luggage of the other students since he is a peasant and has little or no power. As they went on, they were attacked by monsters, which they fought off. Still carrying the luggage, Flora feels even worse that he carries everything by himself. Just then, a strange man watching them in secret seeks to test Rio, and he does this by sending huge monsters. And just then, one attacks Flora while he falls down the cliff they are standing on. Rio quickly rushes to save him but feels down himself. He allows himself to fall, and after landing safely, he feels sad for allowing his powers to show like that. Sir Rio watches them from below as they argue, while Stuart tries to change the whole narrative so he can accuse Rio the peasant of everything. But Princess Flora refuses to allow this and also disagrees when they try to abandon Rio there alone down the cliff where he had fallen. During the talking and asking, they discover a giant monster, and they all begin to fight. The giant monster attacks and leaves the group scattered, and while Princess Flora tries to mend the wound of one of the students, the monster comes face to face with her. Just as it is about to attack her, Rio comes in and saves her again, as he had done previously. After that, the other students calling out to her come up, and Rio goes away. And the strange man who wanted to test him comments on the fact that he had witnessed something even more entertaining than he had expected. He looks at Rio from above as he wonders if he, with his black hair, is the offspring of people who drifted there from the Yagumo region, because that is the only explanation for his ability to use the spirit arts. Back in the school, those in higher authority talk about the fact that the princess wants to look for Rio, but they plan to frame him for the whole thing. The professor hears this and returns to her office worried, and just then Rio walks to her office and runs to hug him. He tells her how he had to return, and he just had to come and bid her goodbye. He promises to write her a letter with the alias Haruto. They bid each other farewell, and she hugs him one last time, so he departs and leaves her crying. The next scene opens to show Rio in a small hut with a little demi-human who lays on the little bed in the hut. He hears sounds, and he puts her to sleep, and comes out, only to find other demi-humans there surrounding him. These girls have wings like a bed and also have the body form of a human. They try to attack them, but he tries to calm them down so he can explain things to them, and when they choose to be calm, the two of them look into the hut and find their kind there on the bed. This made them even more angry, and they attacked him. They fought for a while until he was subdued. Rio now has a dream where he meets with Mai-chan, and he begins to call out to her. When he wakes up, he sees himself surrounded by two demi-humans and chained to the bed on which he lays, and just at that moment, Latifa comes running towards him and hugs him. Her mother follows soon. She apologizes to him for what the others have done to him and asks for his cooperation. Latifa, on the other hand, is angry at whoever did that to Haruto and leaves him chained to the bed like that. The other demigirls who had attacked him go on their knees and begin to apologize to him for mistaking him for a bad person. He asks them not to worry as it was a misunderstanding, and if it had been resolved, it was the most important thing at the moment. Latifa's mom goes further to make it clear that Yuzuma will take full responsibility for her thoughtless actions. She asks them to raise their heads and also goes ahead to ask one of the ladies their morphia to release Rio. She goes on to tell him that the next morning, the elders will gather around so they can give him a proper apology, but for that night, she apologizes to him again and asks him to allow her daughter use the room as well and plead to leave them be as she returns to her task. The next day, Rio makes his way around the kingdom, walking with Latifa's mother. As they go around, he cannot help but admire the place, and he asks her about a particular tree, to which she tells him that it is the world tree in which the great Dryas, a spirit of mighty trees, resides. She goes further to explain that a high-level magical barrier is erected around those three. Without considerable knowledge of the spirit arts, one should not be able to see through it. Soon they get to the hall where they are to do the meeting, and as they sit, one of the elders, known as Slidor, the other lady whom he already knew, and also the dwarf Dominic, they appreciate him for saving their own, who had been taken under slavery. Ladife's mom asks what he would like to wish for, and he wisely asks for Ladife to be taken care of. Ladife's mother goes on to plead with him to stay behind if her daughter has grown fond of him, and the other elders also ask him to stay back. He agrees to stay, and in return, he wishes they had taught him the spirit art. They opted to look for a good teacher for him, and just then a beautiful lady appeared in the room, Lady Dryas, commenting on the fact that since they were through with his issue, they could move on to her issue. They introduce the persona to him as the spirit of the world tree. She gets close to him, telling him she has felt his spirit. She asks him if he had made a covenant with the spirit that way. He would not be able to use it well, and he tells her he does not know. She gets close to him to examine the spirit inside of him, and she notices that there is a person-shaped spirit inside of him. These spirits are the second highest shaped spirits ever. She goes further to explain that the spirits of the highest class, once called the six great spirits, all went missing in the divine demon war over 1,000 years ago, and the spirits all slept inside him. They told him they would decide if they would treat him as a saint since he possessed that much spirit. They soon take him to a hut where he will live. He is made to understand that he will be living there with Latifa, the little girl he saved, and also alongside her maidens, who look after her so they can look after them both. He does not wish to impose on them, but Lady makes him understand that it is necessary, so he decides to go with his plan. Soon, he begins to integrate into the community, and just like that, he joins their rituals and various activities. At the other end, the strange man who was watching them during their practicum descends. He descends from a big bed with one of the students, who had proposed to join the Celestial Brigade military, and so they make their way into the cave. He hands him an egg, asking him to carry it as he must manage the griffin. The young boy carries the egg and asks if the parents of the egg would not be angry and come to look for the egg since it has yet to hatch. He assures him that the distance between there and the Strahl region is considerable, and he may not be able to locate them, so they made their way back to where they had come from on the big bird.